Okay, here's another one. I've learned that the lighting probably needs to be better. So this is being done 4 hours earlier, I think. 5 hours than the last one. We'll see if that helps the visual quality. I'm really interested in improving how these look, even though the actual content is a little off the cuff. I still don't know exactly what I'm going to talk about today. But I do love the idea of refinement as an art. Part of that is the videos. So I don't want anything performative necessarily, but at the same time, it's kind of like not caring what people think about you in terms of how you look, but for your own sake, wanting to dress nice, stuff like that. So I don't want to come in overly scripted with anything, but any way that I can prepare the video and audio to be better. And myself, in some sense, getting good sleep, taking care of myself, having the headspace for it. Not even that so much. I don't mind musing a little bit in a headspace that's not the best, but yeah, not preparing the topics, but trying to prepare the quality of the experience, so to speak, from like an audio-visual perspective. So hopefully this is better. I'll know once I rewatch it and get some thoughts on it, but I had multiple thoughts today. This is a shorter therapy day for me. Normally I'd have more appointments throughout the day, and this one I do not, so I feel like I have a little bit more mental capacity and trying to think about all the different things that I've been curious about and want to talk about, because this field offers millions of topics, like an unbelievable amount of things that you could study and learn more about. And the thing that kept coming to mind, though, was just how people interact with religion and spirituality with their mental health. And that one felt prominent because today, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first day of Passover. And which is why my day's shorter, taking time to go to a Seder in the evening, which are always fun. And how religions have pursued through time so well. But they're also, the research that I see, that I know that I've seen, there might be different things out there on different points, but is the importance of spirituality for mental health and development and growth that direction. That can be more loosely defined. It doesn't mean everyone needs to have a belief that requires a book and a congregation necessarily. And I always define spirituality with my clients and the work that I do as a question of how do you make sense of the universe? Some people, that's, the Bible or the Quran, or they're really into Hinduism or Buddhism, and other people it's all nature-based. Spirituality to them is this more interconnected experience of the universe. So for some people, spiritual development is their connection with nature. Other people, it's their connection with God. But it does seem pretty consistent that people who have a healthy spiritual life or an active spiritual life are overall healthier, from what I've seen. Mental health for sure. But I think a lot of that comes down to, if your life starts to fall apart, if I've rooted my life in making money and I've made that my idol and my belief system is the importance of money or an economic system that benefits me, and then that falls from under me or it's taken away, well, I don't really have that thing anymore. And that's what's interesting and useful about spirituality, is that's going to be very ethereal, eternal and internal. People can't take it from you if it's legitimate. So people in concentration camps or people in prisons can have uplifted spirits. Doesn't mean they want to be there, but it means they're falling back on something bigger that cannot be, there's no thing that can take it from them. That's where is it? Another book under the shelf. That's why I think this is one of the best books ever written. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which I think anyone should read. I would say that should be required reading for anyone who's interested in the human condition at all, or anyone who is wondering if people can be joyful in any circumstance. And I think that's one of the things we struggle with in this country is we have our strifes and things that are difficult, but objectively speaking, the majority of people here have it better than anyone ever in history. And, most people in this country are in the top 10% of earners worldly. And again, we have our problems. This isn't dismissing problems that exist, but most of human history has been how do we just survive. And, nowadays we have a majority of people who might deal with boredom. Not a majority. We have a large percentage of people, I would say, that get bored, or they have actual hobbies that they can invest in. And that's not because they're born into a huge multi-million, billion-dollar household and they have the time. A lot of working class people still can have leisure time. I don't feel like I need to add the caveat every time, but this is obviously not true for every single person. But I don't think a lot of us can fathom how bad things can really get in life on a very tangible level. Like, people know the Holocaust existed. We know slavery existed and exists quite thrivingly still today in a lot of places. And we know that horrible things happen to people, but there's this disconnect, I think, for a lot of us, in the same way we disconnect from atrocities in film. It's like we can watch a movie and know something's happening, but not really take that into as real of an experience as it is. And I think it's hard to do, and it probably should be hard, because there's just certain things we can't fully empathize or understand unless we're there in the moment. So point being, a lot of us who, when you say what matters to me is that I can do my art, or I can go work, or I can go spend time with family. Those are things that matter to me, but all of those can be taken away. I can be forced to not work on even things I like. I can be removed of every creative art I have. All of my family can go away. And if those are the only things I've made important, or that's what I would define as the meaning of life, well then now there's nothing important and my life has no meaning. This is why I think spirituality, and I think the research supports this is why it's so important for everyone. And I think a lot of the people who don't have that, there's a level of fortune that they get because they don't have that broken down. Now, I will also say there are people who are not spiritual who could still withstand atrocity better than some spiritual people could. This isn't like a anti-atheism thing, because you can be spiritual and atheist. This is why the definition of what helps you make sense of the universe is why you can have a philosophy that works too, right? A lot of people who are maybe interested in Stoic philosophy or cynicism or things like this. They're ways of viewing the world. And to me, those count as definitions of spirituality, even if they don't count to other people. It is, how do you make sense of the universe? When the rug gets pulled out from under you, what are you falling onto? Is it a pit of meaninglessness, or is it, well, at least I still have this baseline thing where no matter what, there's certain things people can't take from you. And I think that's what's important. And then everything else is extra. And, the fact that I can record something on a phone and post it online is extra. And I can still act within my meaning systems while doing that. So whatever I fall back onto, whatever my definition of spirituality is, can still come through this. And yet, if this is taken away, it doesn't change what those things are. The flip is, if those things changed for me, it would change everything about what this means. So, I don't know. There's a lot to reflect on with religious and spiritual stuff for everyone. Even if you aren't religious or spiritual, that's, your life is affected by that, because majority of people are, and you'll have to encounter that to some extent. And then, how do you interact with that? Or how do people of different beliefs interact? And the fact that we can go throughout our day and everyone's not trying to murder and steal each other stuff all the time is kind of crazy to me. That there's like a level of order. Like, we still have problems, but things work. Like, stuff gets made, streets are maintained often, not all the time. Same with establishments. It's just wild to me, really. So I guess I'm like off on a different thing now, but it is interesting. I think anyone who has the opportunity to experience like spiritual or religious traditions, there's a lot to learn from that. Like today being Passover, this week being Passover, being able to experience like a Seder, for instance, Passover Seder. It's just fascinating, the religious traditions and how strong those are and why they exist. Like, traditions exist for a reason. It's not just because people like brutally pass them down. There's a willingness that has to happen with that, especially nowadays. No adult for the most part is being forced to pass those traditions on to their kids, for the majority of people, or to invite people to join them and stuff like that, to experience these things. So the things that stick around, whether you like them or not, are just very fascinating to me. The same with books, right? So like any book that's still in print, there's a reason for that, and that's a very interesting thing. And the longer it stays in print, like I know this was true for me, and I think it's true for a lot of people. Like, we don't realize how many books just stop getting printed. It's a little bit different now with print on demand and self-publishing being as accessible as it's ever been, it seems. But like, people will like celebrate their book having like a second printing or a third. People saying it's still in print today after being published 50 years ago, and that is a milestone. So you think about books that withstand time, whether you agree with what they're saying, there's clearly something there resonating with people because they're buying it. And I do think that goes past the point of just purely good marketing or people forcing it to be sold. I think that ends at a certain point. So, especially books that feel like they should go out of date. Like, my field's a good example of therapy and psychology. Like, it's still so new that, for something to be read decades later, it's not super common, because we learn more about the world and people and psychology and mental health. So anytime there's a book that's still recommended that's been around for even a couple years, that's really cool for me. And that's kind of what one of the reasons why I think this is, especially if you're in this field, if you're in mental health at all, or have any interest in psychology or philosophy or religion, but I would say the psych field and mental health, this is really a must read, because most of these things don't stick around that long. I'm trying to see what this book is technically classified under in terms of how it's retailed and sold. But when was it first published? 1959? Is that the earliest I can see? I could look that up right now, I guess. But even so, that's a long time for a book on mental health and a psychotherapeutic approach to still be in circulation and valued the way it is. I know most people, if you say logotherapy, they wouldn't know what that means, but a lot of people have heard of this book and this person for a very important reason. It has withstood the test of time. Just like traditions, just like movies that have stayed popular, and also understanding why. And I think film is a very good example of that. You might watch old films and think, this is bad, this isn't enjoyable. But when you take it into the context of when it came out, a lot of people like Star Wars. That's not a good example. But you look at what it did for special effects, or even Logan's Run, which I believe came out the year before Star Wars, if I'm not mistaken, and had allegedly mind-blowing special effects. And then Star Wars right after that. If you watch those two movies in order, you can see why Star Wars was impactful. If you watch Logan's Run, then Star Wars. If you watch Avatar and then Star Wars, I mean, in terms of special effects, you're probably not gonna think Star Wars up to the ante at all. But that's because you're comparing it in the wrong way. So some things withstand the test of time because of the impact that they had upon initial release, and other things withstand the test of time because of the impact that they still have on today. I think even the first category is true of impact on today. This is why you can have a business book like How to Win Friends and Influence People, the Carnegie book, because it still works. Those are still principles that make sense to people and they can still apply. If you go out and do them, the chances of you having better relationships, especially in a business setting, are higher. It's not outdated. And some of these books maybe have outdated language, or the examples that they use wouldn't apply to today, but the general principles stay the same. This is also why old science fiction books that talk about AI, which we now see artificial intelligence, the ones that withstand, I think iRobot is a great example, which probably more withstands because I love it more than I hear other people talk about it, but it's still relevant. It still makes sense, and that's an older book. Not like the movie, but the book is fantastic, and it tries to examine some of the shortfalls of artificial intelligence, and I think that's really interesting. So as the technologies catch up, or as research catches up, and as life moves on, forms of media that we consume that keep getting consumed are that way because they're saying something true that is still true. And I think that's kind of inherent with truth, is that it's always true versus something being gimmicky. This is why a lot of people will say that they only read classics, because those books have proven to stay relevant and be a higher beacon of truth, even fiction. That's why people can read fiction books that are old. It's because they still resonate today. They still have meaning today. That's why people still read Les Mis, Crime and Punishment, Bronte books, all this, it's because they resonate still for some reason. And it's not because of the era they're set in, it's because of deeper messages underneath that speak something true about the human condition or challenge people in a certain way. And so that's just fascinating. So all that's to the starting topic of religion and tradition. It's important to understand why things stick around, whether you believe in it or not. There's lots of classic books I don't like, but it's important for me to know, why have they stuck around? What is it doing to people that it still matters? Why do people still talk? Why do people still watch The Office? It still resonates. It's not outdated. Which is not the same thing as people ask, could you make The Office today? I don't know. But it wouldn't be the same today. There's something that wouldn't work if it's made today as back then. And yeah, so understanding why certain religions stay around, why people still read the Quran, Tao Te Ching, Bhagavad Gita, Code of the Samurai, Upanishads, all this stuff, the Bible. And they're being read for a reason still. And they're in print for a reason still. So there's something about them that is speaking into people in a way that is captivating and retaining their existence. So, yeah, I think it's worth reflecting on. And it also can give the human existence a deeper meaning when the spirituality is connected to it. So, there's a really good saying that I think I always mess up, but just about people who plant trees knowing they'll never sit under their shade. When we have goals that are bigger than our existence, ironically, a lot of the time we're more likely to pursue them, which kind of doesn't make sense. If I was building a project, you see this a lot with cathedrals. I forget the one, I think in Spain, that it's been being worked on for forever, and it's almost done. But these things that people can start working on knowing they're going to be dead before it's finished, and feel still that it's important. That's the level of spirituality, I would argue. There's a bigger importance to this, multi-generational, and they're caring about something bigger than them, and that's a bigger theme as well. For people to have good mental health is, you're not the biggest thing in the world. You're not the most important thing. It can also help people who are feeling down. Probably wouldn't go as far as to say people with clinical depression, low levels of depression, bouts of sadness, apathy, stuff like that, a bit anhedonic. You go do stuff for other people, it can make you feel better. I recommend that to a lot of people I see. Go volunteer, go help people. It takes focus off of you and onto something bigger than you, a group, another person, the importance of connecting in relationship and offering more to the world around you, and doing so willingly. There's plenty of research suggesting that doing the same task willingly or forcibly dramatically changes your perception of it. See it all the time. People are like, I don't want to do it because you told me to, but I would have done it before. Same thing. Hear that a lot with people who go through school. They're like, I don't like reading anymore because I had to read all the time. Yeah, they were forced to do it, so they don't like it as much. If you willingly, by choice, go help other people, your problems often feel smaller. I can see how that could run its course on some people with, feeling like no one ever does anything back for you. I get that. But you take some attention off of yourself by helping others. And it's not doing it in a way that's abusive to yourself. It's, I'm wallowing in myself. I'm going to go help someone else out for a little bit. Go offer my assistance in some way. It can make a big difference for a lot of people. And it can be a healthy habit. Again, not to the detriment of your own care and your responsibilities, but it's to help people sometimes. So, yeah, that filled up some space, I guess. Just a lot of reflection on religion and traditions and things like that. So, yeah, I could keep going, but I'll probably leave it there for today. I'm hoping the visuals were better, and I hope when I listen to this, the audio is coming in. I feel like I got quiet a lot, so we'll see. Yeah. Anyway, that's that.